Hi, welcome to Edward Box Guitar Tuition. So today's classic album inspection is 90125 by Yes. It was released on 7th November 1983. It's 40 years old today. If you're wondering why it's called 90125, that's the catalogue number of the album. I think it was supposed to be called 90124, but that wouldn't have worked in other territories, apparently, so that's why they settled on that. So trying to cut a very long story short, Trevor Rabin moved to Los Angeles around 81, I think. 82, he was working on a new solo album, looking for a deal. He was introduced to Chris Squire and Alan White by Mutt Lang, who's also South African. They started working together. They wanted to do something more poppy, more commercial, Squire and Anderson. Rabin was liking working with them. He decided it should be a band project, not solo, and Squire suggested Tony Kaye come in. Tony Kaye hadn't played with Yes since 1971. At this point, they're called Cinema. Trevor Horn, who's obviously been a member of Yes and is a friend of theirs from the Drama album, he's assigned as producer. I think they get the money bankroll back. I called Phil Carson, who was a big executive at Atlantic Records and was instrumental in AC/DC's career. So basically, they were going to come to Cinema, and they spent about 300 grand. They had demos, and then they spent about 300 grand recording the songs up to a certain point. But it was felt, I think Horner had a crack at the singing, it was felt that the vocals weren't distinctive enough. Trevor Rabin's and Chris Squire's vocals just weren't quite there. So they came to the attention of Ahmet Ertegun again, who'd signed Yes back in the day. He said, look, I'll sign you, what about bringing John Anderson back, and we'll pay to finish the album. So Squire went over to meet up with John Anderson, actually met in his car, because John Anderson, Chris Squire's wives, had fallen out prior to this, obviously going back to the Yes days. Not sure what that was about, but I know I did read a biography of Yes, and it was Chris Welch's biography, and I think various families attached to the members of Yes were spending more money than the other one and so forth back in the days of the band. This was all billed to the band, so maybe it was something to do with that, who knows. Maybe they've fallen out on the tour bus. It's like prog rock Spinal Tap. So anyway, Anderson liked what he heard. He changed some lyrics, changed a few bits and bobs. So all the tracks on the album are co-written by Squire, Anderson, Rabin, Tony Kaye and Alan White getting on the act. Tony Kaye actually quit the recording sessions at one point because he wasn't getting on with Trevor Horn. He couldn't get to grips with the technology. And he came back to the band, joined back in for the tour once the album was complete, but he did play most of the keyboards. I think Trevor Horn obviously is used to technology. He uses the Fairlight computer a lot on this, I believe. He bought one of those back in 1982 when he spent 18 grand when he set up a basic studio. Obviously 18 grand's not basic, but it's probably getting on for 100 grand on that 90 grand. He actually hired someone to program it because it's so complicated. And that's sort of the basic nutshell. And then when it came for the album coming out, the label said, look, you've got to call this Yes. Obviously with Anderson being back, there's talk of calling it the new Yes. But this is quite a common thing with record labels, like it's happened with Black Sabbath, with Ronnie James Dio. You better call it Black Sabbath because, people know that name. Same with Van Halen, with Sammy Hagar. I think they wanted to use a different name. It's like, well, no, you're Van Halen. And this is why names get renewed, get used over time and have different lineups, really, because there's commercial capital in that. So I've probably missed a lot of stuff out on that. If you go on something like Wikipedia, you'll find all the info on this. This album sold 3 million copies in the United States. Checking over certifications, it's sold about another million worldwide. So on what I can see certified, so its worldwide sales could be 5-6 million. It made number 5 in the US charts. Okay. So first track's Owner of a Lonely Heart, needs no introduction, it's 4 minutes 27. I think there's two things that jump out to me about this song. I don't tire of hearing it, some people do, but it's basically the boldness of the production, the way it opens with a huge reverb on the guitars. And then when it comes in, it's really dry, like the guitar, and then the snare drum's quite kind of sort of thin sounding but kind of poppy and unintrusive. Now later on, Horn will use different snare sounds, and songs will have like a bigger 80s snare. It's really cool. And yeah, you've got the crazy harmonised solo, which I think's basically, he's actually used a preset to harmonise in fifths. probably in some like kind of early digital gear, because it doesn't sound, it hasn't got that sound where he's tracked the intervals, I don't think. You got that amazing bit after the solo, it just breaks down that heavily compressed clean sound, and you got that dramatic change in the sonic soundscape where you've got the kind of big harmonised guitar sound, you got this really tight clean sound. I know Chris DeGarmo of Queen's Right was a big fan of the production of this song. Then you've got all the crazy Fairlight stuff. I'm guessing it's Fairlight or Simps, but the program for the Fairlight, I'm not sure how Fairlight works, I've got to be honest. I just remember in the 80s people said no Fairlight, but anyway, yeah, I just think it's great, it's really bold. So next track's Hold On, this is 518. This is more of a straight rocker, kind of a walking sort of bass line, but a really cool kind of verse, again with some like cool simp stuff. Big euphoric chorus. I think that's the difference with this album compared to other Yes stuff. It falls into more traditional song structures, and it has big euphoric choruses, and Rabin's vocals mesh well with Anderson's for the harmonies, and then he does some good secondary singing, Trevor Rabin. There you got It Can Happen. This is probably my favourite track on the album. Really cool. I think Chris Squire came with a riff on the piano, and then Trevor Rabin took it from there. But it makes great use of offbeats. It's just a straight groove, and it's got that really uplifting offbeats on the riff. I love the chorus on this, and the bit where it breaks down. It's a constant fight, you know. And it just like top cut time Alan White, and you can hear the sort of snare more enlarged on this. Maybe they've used another sample with it, I don't know. But again, not every track sounds the same on this album, but it's got a consistency of sound, but it's like everything's treated individually. And then side one of the original Vinyl Finish was Changes. So this was probably the moment when old school Yes fans were kind of feeling happier, because it's got a crazy sort of timing intro where I think it's kind of groups of three, kind of cycling, and I don't know if it goes into 7 time, I don't know, 7/4, 7/8, who knows. It's got kind of wiggly bits, I don't know. It kind of converges, peaks, and then just goes into a straight feel with really lovely clean guitar sounds. Good vocal Trevor Rabin, and then obviously John Anderson comes in on the chorus and other bits. So really cool track. This is 6:16. This is the second longest track on the album. Really strong side one. You can't sort of deny like really good variety. The focus on hooks, the focus on like dramatic, really interesting production, but with some lots of progressive and little musical moments. So as It Can Happen, I'd just forgotten to mention before, Chris Squire does that great bass, you know, on the intro, and just the sort of way it counters the other part, you know. So just showing real maturity, the band, you know, they've obviously got, well, the band members that are there, they've got their whittling out of the way, and they're doing more, you know, careful whittling. Bit more bottom end on Chris Squire's bass as well, not that classic sort of middly clank that he had. Still there, still prevalent, but just kind of warmer and just filling out more. Side two with Cinema, so this is instrumental, this is their original name of the band. It's a cool little instrumental, it actually makes good use of voices in it as well. Actually the intro, the synths on this actually remind me of the intro of a track called Urban Days off band called McAlpine, off that Eyes of the World album. They've obviously nicked that off, ripped it off a bit, I think. But this is co-written by Tony Kaye, gets a co-write on this. Now you got Leave It. I think this is where you can hear what I think is the Fairlight. So Trevor Horn, you know, he's obviously sampled them, sampled their voices, and then he's created this kind of, I don't know, boom, boom, boom. I don't know how you describe it, but you can hear like he's obviously hitting the keys maybe, and that's just triggering the voices, triggering the sample of the voices, and then obviously hitting the correct notes, triggering the pitch, and it creates this really interesting thing. I think Def Leppard did a similar thing on Hysteria. Maybe they possibly sung it all, but I don't know. So yeah, this is a cool track. It's got a really good groove on it. Chris Squire's bass is great. He's kind of very sparse, but he's kind of hitting the right space. Alan White's groove's really good. It's different from the other tracks on side one. Like side two kind of stretches into other territories. Next one is our song. This it's got the kind of most poppy sort of kind of keyboard line, kind of bass moans along. It's got some funny timing on this. I can't, if I written that down. I was listening to it before, thought, oh, there's some funny timing there, but I haven't, so apologies. But like a lot of progressive rock, you know, that they do still put that in. They're kind of breaking into more traditional time signatures for their verses and choruses 4/4 time. But you know, you're getting, I think, you know, 7/4, or bar of 4, bar of 3, and things like that. Then you got City of Love. This it's got a really dirty riff. I remember Trevor Rabin reading an interview with him. He said, I love the dirty riff on this track, and it's just 2 chords, bow, bow. Massive, great chorus on this. You can hear Trevor Rabin's voice sort of pushing on the chorus, but it's really catchy. And the keyboard sounds are really cool. It's got that slightly sort of you know, South Asian kind of Japanese type sound on the keyboards, and works really well. Again, the production's of its time on this, but it's good of its time. You know, it's not bad 80s production, it's good 80s production. And obviously the sounds he was using on this, he'd end up using on Frankie Goes to Hollywood, I think. I think that comes after. I'm talking about Trevor Horn here. You know, the guy's notorious perfectionist. He re-recorded Frankie Goes to Hollywood 3 times. He spent 70 grand until he arrived on the mix. The only member of Frankie Goes to Hollywood on Relax is Holly Johnson. He used, I think he himself plays on some crack session musicians. He even used the Blockheads backing band for that. But I digress. So yeah, City of Love's really cool, and then he finishes with Hearts, which is kind of 7 minutes 36. Probably my least favourite track, but it's still good. Again, it's the band stretching out more. I think a bit more typical John Anderson kind of spirituality lyric. It's good. You know, really good album. An interesting shape. You know, your front half of the album is sort of your heavy hitting tracks, and then it kind of stretches out more. But Leave It was a single. I think our song might have been as well. So yeah, 90125. Obviously I'm not a big Yes fan. You know, I you know, had Close to the Edge, and I've heard bits and bobs of her albums, but it's just too proggy for me. So you know, this version of Yes, I really like what they did. I quite like Big Generator afterwards, actually, although it's not as memorable as this. I can understand some people not liking this. But I think bands have to, they probably maybe took a cue from Genesis as well. Like, you know, if bands want to continue being commercially successful and keep their sort of, keeping the style they're accustomed to, they needed to adapt their sound in a different way to be relevant. You know, if Yes had kept their old sound, I'm sure they would have kept playing, you know, good venues and doing decent sales, but nothing like this. And I think this is a key thing in the music industry as well. It showed you could take a heritage act, update its sound, and do very well out of it. And then later on you got Tina Turner the next year, Private Dance, obviously different kind of music. And then using co-writers, which is what I'm with Heart and Aerosmith. And obviously Genesis sound got more commercial with the Invisible Touch album. But this is when, you know, this is proper, still progressive, I think. Okay, cheers, thanks for checking that out. 90125, 40 years old today. Cheers.